All right, so I'm going to start the recording, and then we can kind of just get into it here.
Okay.
Cool. And I'll let you lead.
Yeah. You can take over whenever you want as well.
Okay.
I want to do like if someone's been kidnapped, when I said hostile takeover, would that be a good way of saying what I'm doing? Because basically I want to have you come on the podcast. And I think if it was video, I'd do it in Vegas. You said you don't want to go to Vegas. And then I can remember saying to you, well, at some point, maybe I'd come into your studio and we'd do my podcast in your studio. And you said, yeah.
That's what we're doing.
That's what we're doing now.
All right.
Pete Gruber is an Arizona-based entrepreneur who started a high-tech business in a residential home in North Phoenix in 1983 to design, build, and support data centers. Today, the Gruber companies include nationwide critical power equipment sales and service, data center communication products manufacturing, data center construction, and most recently, servicing Tesla electric vehicles as Gruber Motor Company.
Hey, this is Chris from the Battle Proof podcast. I'm here with Pete Gruber from the Gruber Motor Company, and we're actually in his studio. So thank you very much for letting us come here.
Oh, well, thanks for coming. Yeah, this is going to be fun, I think.
Yeah. So I want to start on the basis that how did I find out about Pete Gruber? I thought I would have found out myself, but it was actually my father in the UK. He watches your show. Every podcast that you do, he has breakfast in the morning and then watches your podcast, and he's been doing that for I think a couple of years. So he's gone through all the podcasts, and then I started watching the podcast as well because I speak to my dad almost every day, and now I'm probably watch every single podcast that you do as well. So it's really cool to be here.
Do you guys watch the AI podcast too, or just the EV related stuff?
Obviously that's way beyond my AI and my dad.
It deviates quite a bit. There's not much EV content.
We're starting to get into it now. He's knowing, understanding what Mid-Journey is, and and I think because that is part of the future, right? So today we're going to be talking about EV. We can talk about AI, and if we're on the AI tip right now, then your studio right now is set up with a green screen. So I actually went into Mid-Journey and said, put a Tesla in the desert because we're in the desert, and this is the image that came up. What do you think? It's like a
pretty convincing. What we find is that when you use AI, it doesn't get the details perfect. Now, This is a very Arizona scene from the Painted Desert to Sedona, but the peaks won't be perfect. In fact, the details on the cars typically are kind of humorous as well.
Yeah.
In general, it looks like a Model S or whatever you're trying to render, but then like on a Tesla Roadster, you'll see a gas cap or you'll see door handles, which immediately tell you it's not quite intelligent enough yet to render a Tesla Roadster.
So I was commenting earlier that the wheels are very large. I don't know. They're bigger than 22s, right? They're almost like rolling on 30s or something.
It almost looks like the front is bigger than the back, so it doesn't have the perspective right.
Is there anything else that you would say is a bit kind of weird on that, or even better?
You know
reality?
What? It's I can't quite distinguish whether we're trying to do a Model Y, a Model 3, a Model S. I don't see any door handles, do you?
I don't.
No,
well, my eyesight's not great.
Yeah. Well,
not like yours.
Yeah.
You have good eyesight now, right?
I do know. After that laser surgery, I used to really squint. And the funniest thing was we would get the questions coming in, and I'm like Ron Burgundy. I'll read whatever's on the screen.
Has anyone played a joke on you then?
I think they have. They won't admit it, but I think they have.
That's awesome. So we're at Pete at the Gruber Motor Company. Let's start off. What does the Gruber Motor Company actually do to someone that doesn't know what it is?
Well, let me go back into the Gruber companies as a whole. We've been around for 40 years, actually.
Oh, wow.
And it's always been high tech. And about in 2014, I got a Tesla Roadster. And didn't realize for the first 6 months or so as my daily driver that I was driving around in something that we've been servicing for over 30 years, which is critical power equipment. Critical power equipment is like lighting inverters, UPSs, and data centers, and it's a three-phase inverter combined with a DC plant, which is identical to what's in a Tesla Roadster. You've got a DC battery and a three-phase inverter, but what it powers is different. The three-phase AC induction motor in the car versus a bunch of servers in the computer room. Well, within a couple of months after that paradigm shift, and I don't know why it took me over 6 months to figure that out.
Was that 6 months since you had the Roadster?
Exactly,
Okay.
yes.
So it wasn't like a light bulb moment, like as you sat in, it just came to you.
No, and I'm embarrassed that it didn't. It was a field engineer that was walking by my car as I was taking my lunch pail out, and he said, "What's that big black box?" I said, "It's a three-phase inverter." He says, we repair those. And that was the paradigm shift.
So if someone doesn't know what a three-phase inverter is, can you explain what that is?
You can't, let me back up. When you have a golf cart, you have DC batteries and you have a DC motor, which is highly efficient, you would think, because you're not converting anything from DC to, AC. But they found that with cars, in order to get regenerative braking, converting to AC is far more efficient, and the three-phase AC induction motor, which is over 100 years old, it was what Nikola Tesla invented.
Okay.
Is far more efficient because it actually has a phase relationship with three phases. They're 120 degrees out of phase, and it pulls it into rotation. So they began to use a three-phase AC induction motor in a car, but you can't store AC. You can store DC.
Okay.
So that's why we have a 1,200-pound battery pack in a Model S, 1,000-pound in a Tesla Roadster, and then a conversion box, which is the inverter, and it has to be three phases because they're using a three-phase AC induction motor.
Okay. That's amazing that it's like over 100 years old.
It is, yes, and there hasn't been much of an improvement to it either, which is unusual because if you take a look at technology today, I mean, every other month you have improvements in something.
Yeah. So my batteries improve, motors improve.
Right. The chemistries keep on changing. There are new things on the horizon. And but yeah, it is remarkable that they got it right the first time.
So when you, after 6 months, and you were told this and you realized this, what was next? Because you're going into work, and I mean, that's in your head already from your work.
Yeah.
And then you're getting in a car. What was the kind of, what were you thinking then?
I have heard Elon describe what goes on in his head. It's a lot of noise. Okay. And I tend to have that tendency as well. So I had all of this noise in my head saying, we need to get in this business. So over the weekend, I got on Craigslist. You're familiar with Craigslist, being in the States here. And I looked up Tesla Roadster service to see what's available. I actually found a guy that was advertising that he can repair Tesla Roadsters. Which is extremely rare because, you try that nowadays, you probably won't find anything other than us.
Yeah.
But I called him up. We had a chat. He says, I've got one. I'm an electronics guy. And I said, you should probably apply for our tech manager position for critical power. And
so he had the bio that would work with your company kind of thing.
Precisely. He was looking for a job anyway. So
you didn't even know that, that he was looking for. Just after a discussion.
It was all a serendipitous, sequence of events. He came in, he interviewed, he had the skills to be a tech manager, and I encouraged him to look for Tesla Roadster customers at the same time that he's managing our department here, right? He did. We found our first customer up in the Bay Area, and the car came to us. He was facing a $10,000 inverter replacement, the PEM as they call it.
Okay.
And Tesla doesn't repair them in the field. So we said, ship us the car, we'll fix it. We not only fixed it for $2,300, but then completely rebuilt it. And we found everything that needed to be done that was deferred maintenance. So at that point, the word gets out quickly. Oh, there's an alternative to Tesla, a second option. And the customers continue to come ever since then.
Did it start like day one as Gruber Motor Company, like as the name, like on the first job?
It did. And the reason for that was it used to be Tesla Motor Company. And we thought, why not just make it Gruber Motor Company?
Yeah.
And then eventually Tesla changed it to just Tesla.
Okay. So you could maybe do the same in the future?
We already have in the other divisions,
Okay.
I mean, Gruber is a well-recognized brand today. So,
Yeah.
but in order to distinguish between 4 divisions, we still keep Gruber Motor Company. And it's actually GMC, which is another play on words.
Yeah.
At some point, we may be larger than GMC, right?
Why not? It's all future. It's all technology.
Yeah. And it's cool, too, because we've got a big 20-foot box truck. And on the front of that, we have our logo, which is GMC.
Yeah, actually, popped by the shop first because that's where I thought the studio was.
Uh-huh.
And I was just seeing, what are those? They were like 3 white Teslas all in a row. And they looked like they were new from the back. I don't even think they had number plates on the back or something.
Mm-hmm.
And I was going, oh, maybe these are 3 brand new Teslas that have come through. But then I went round the side and it had Gruber Motor Company on the doors and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess, I mean, do you have, if someone was local and they wanted to have their Roadster fixed, or would you give them like a loaner, like a normal place?
Yeah, we have. We actually give them Tesla Model S's.
S's, okay.
And for very, very special customers, we may have a Tesla Roadster available from time to time.
Okay.
They stopped making Tesla Roadsters, by the way, in 2011 in the U.S., started in 2008, 2012 in Europe. And so there's no such thing as a new Tesla Roadster except our 3 Chinese Roadsters,
Right.
which are the barn find Roadsters, which are the 13-year-old, basically new cars.
Who found these? Like, someone must have had to open one of the doors to see what was in there first, right? If they would just been sitting there for so long.
The story gets murky, as do most of the Roadster stories, but it went something like this. At the dock in Guangdong, they finally discovered that they had 3 sea containers with contents unidentified. They opened them up and saw 3 Tesla Roadsters. Then they looked at the amount of storage charges that these had accrued. And the most recent estimate we have is $380,000 in storage charges over 13 years.
I wonder why it took them 13 years to realize that. Like, do you think they just got like hundreds of thousands of containers and they didn't even know they were there?
Completely, yes.
Yeah.
Probably lost track of
They were
things.
probably right at the bottom with like
Yeah.
a whole load of other stacked brand new ones on there.
So once they open them up and realize, oh my God, let's see if we can find a buyer for these. Well, then it gets into the friend of a friend type category. And the current sellers had someone that was important at that dock. He notified them, hey, there's 3 Tesla Roadsters here. Do you think these have any value? They reached out to us, and we immediately told them, yes, they have value because they are the equivalent of 0-mile cars.
Okay.
Which later on we discovered was not quite the case, and I'll explain that in a minute. But so here we have untouched, never titled cars, 3 of them. And you know how the car world loves the barn find story.
Yeah.
And when you uncover, you open up the barn and you see something covered in dust, and
Right.
you realize it's a pedigreed 1971 Hemi Cuda convertible, which they made only 11 of, and now they found the 11th one, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of how this went. So we have a free Roadster matchmaking site on our website where we allow people to sell their cars. We started that 3 years ago because, the auctions don't do a great job of selling electric vehicles. They don't know how to sell them. They don't know how to charge them. They don't know how to present them. They don't understand things like calculated amp hour capacity is an important specification. It's no longer about, horsepower or, 0 to 60, although those could still be important, I suppose.
I think when you go 0 to 60, like, it's good to know, but like now it's almost like they go like 3 seconds, 2 seconds, 4 seconds. I mean,
Well, people
that's
start,
so fast anyway.
Yeah, I mean, people start yawning now when you get
Yeah.
into these 0 to 60s when you have cars that are doing that under 2 seconds.
Right.
But anyway, that's how the cars came to us. We said they asked us, well, what are they worth? We have no idea. When you go to sell your house, you have what's called comp value.
Yeah.
And your realtor is going to look at, well, what did the other homes in your neighborhood sell for? And immediately have an asking price. Well, when you have something like this that has never sold before, it's not possible to do that. So we said,
Like a one-off. It's like almost like an auction type thing. Like a
Exactly.
Barrett Jackson. We have these 3 57 blah 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 found, haven't even been touched, no miles. And if everyone was the right people were in the room at the right time, they'd be going, wouldn't they? And the price would just go up.
right. And that's exactly what we ended up doing, even though we don't encourage auctions because of the unpredictability.
Yeah.
In this case, we did bids. We took bids on them. And the bids, I mean, they came in steadily. They got up to $800,000, and then suddenly we had somebody that wanted them badly, and he said, "I'll give you $2 million for those three."
I would have gone 8,001.
Well, yes, exactly. So it ended up that $2 million bid sat out there for about 2 or 3 months or so, and it turns out that the successful bidder at that time at $2 million was unable to get insurance for the cars. And I'm kind of glad that it didn't go that route, because they were going to put them back on the road.
Okay.
With
You might want them like hanging from a ceiling from somewhere, or like in a museum or something, maybe? Or
They are museum pieces, and like I've said, they're like Picassos that you hang on the wall,
Okay.
or that 1989 bottle of Chateau Lafite that is worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, but everybody knows you can't drink
Don't
it.
drink it.
It's vinegar, it's just collectible, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of how these cars are. Can you imagine buying one of these cars for hundreds of thousands of dollars, making it operational? That's another, big chunk of money. And then driving it, and every time you take it out, you say to yourself, "Oh, I just lost $40,000 for that trip to the grocery store," or whatever.
Yeah. It's like getting a new car, and you pull out and you just like take, I guess, like the first right. Then it's like, I've just lost 10 grand. Like straight away.
Yep, and it's a very real emotion that should be considered. So anyway, this particular seller was unable. They were going to put them into lease. And there's a law in Canada, apparently, that you can't insure these used cars after, or lease them and get insurance after 10 years.
Yeah. What is like the out of warranty kind of year? Is it like 10, or is it less than that? Like with Teslas, like what warranty do you get? Say if you bought a Model 3 today, what kind of warranty would you get from Tesla?
It is typically 8-year drivetrain warranty.
8 years?
Yeah.
Okay. And is that more than like an ICE vehicle? Sounds like it is.
I think it is.
Yeah.
The warranties fluctuate, and it's also based on which components. And in an EV, you have, a few expensive components, and that's in the drivetrain, the battery and the drive motor. So it's a good thing that they have an 8-year warranty.
Definitely.
So we're standing here in the battery bunker, and you can see it's gotten very busy. We have sheets and modules on the work surfaces here that are in various stages of charging, discharging, or being serviced. And since we ran out of room on the west side of this bunker, we are now beginning to install furniture to replicate what we have on this side here. And when this is done, we'll then be able to take these modules, these are from the Model S's, and the Tesla Roadster battery sheets, and continue to either keep them on life support or charge and discharge them.
Is there anything like you can tell me that is new at Gruber, like literally brand new? Maybe even something you haven't even talked on the podcast yet that we could like maybe go into a bit more detail on. So really like now and the future.
So the new things?
Yeah.
Well, we currently have one of our buildings is being completely renovated into an exotic car storage facility.
Exotic car storage facility. Okay.
It will probably be the first dedicated EV exotic car storage facility, because there really aren't any collectible EVs yet,
Right.
except for the Tesla Roadster. Which
What
is
are the
now
next
coming
ones
up.
down the line? Like, what do you think, like, since it's exotic, what are you thinking? What do you think, like, say, how many cars do you think you're going to be able to store in this place, phase one?
60 to 80.
60 to 80.
Yeah.
Do you think they're all going to be Teslas, or do you think it's going to, like, go into, like, maybe Rivians and Lucids
There's a
and
lot of
other vehicles?
Yeah, there's a lot of unpredictability in business, in that doors open up as you create the
Yeah.
facility. So
Yeah.
it's difficult to project. Now, I have some preferences. I would like to see nothing but Roadsters in that exotic car storage facility. But if we were
It's
to
old,
get
man. That's
Yeah,
old.
yeah.
It's future.
but your other question was, what are the next collectible EVs? Typically, in a world of car collecting, it takes decades to get anything to collectible
Yeah.
status. And it has to be limited production. I mean, they're producing the hell out of these cars nowadays, hundreds of thousands of Model S's,
Yeah.
2 million pre-orders for the Cybertruck. It's difficult to project which will be the next collectible car. It could also be a car that has a manufacturer that folded, and there are
Yeah.
very few produced. but they are, technologically interesting. Like the Aptera, for example, once it comes out.
Right.
If they don't make it, So it's hard to, throw a dart and hit a bullseye with that question.
Yeah. By opening it, though, you're opening everyone's mind to anyone that is doing their own conversions at home. That's happening. Like in the off-road world, people like taking Tesla Model 3 engines and putting them in a Can-Am, using Prius batteries and stuff. So like these garage guys, they're already like trying to electrify, UTVs. The only thing is they're not really using the modern technology or something that's coming out in 2 years and stuff. So for me, like batteries is the key thing for EV, because I think like the engines are really good. The luxury side of it, everything's good. The materials are good. But when it came to like range anxiety, and that became like a discussion, and people going, oh, can only do 300 miles or 400. Like no one's driving 300 miles like 7% of the time. Right? You're just like driving to work. You're driving to the supermarket.
And you need a bathroom break on the trip, and you got lunch is in there somewhere. And
But I think so going back to storage facility, you're right. Like when it opens, you've got the build up of it opening, talking about this this storage facility being opened. Then what everyone else has been thinking for the last 10 years and what they're working on might tie into what you're doing. So I think like it would be interesting to see what kind of vehicles would be in there. I mean, with Battle Approved, we're doing all electric quads and UTVs. Maybe we can store some of our vehicles in there at some point as well. So at least, we have this off-road side as well. We won't dirty the lab, of course. Like we'll make sure they're clean when they come in, but
like any successful business, eventually you run out of space.
Yeah.
And so, will we be able to scale and replicate? That's going to be infinitely easier than the service business that we have, because there are some powerful barriers to growing that.
Storage can be twofold. It's like you can be, say, in Canada or anywhere around the world and store your vehicle there and know that it's being taken care of. But when I come to Phoenix or travel around Phoenix, especially North Scottsdale, especially around Scottsdale Airport, there's a lot of luxury, exotic storage car facilities for ICE, right? McLarens and all this kind of stuff. And it becomes a lifestyle, almost like a bit like a clubhouse type thing. Are you thinking that it might be like that as well? Like people that are storing their vehicles here or want to like hang out here? Or like you thinking that as well? Like you would have a lounge and maybe you'd like, people would like want to do a party there and they could hire it out and stuff like that.
I think that that's a possibility. Now, we're talking about an 8,200 square foot building, so we don't have, the square footage that some of these exotic places have, like the Vault in Scottsdale, for example, What is going to be unique about this facility is that the requirements for storing electric cars is a bit different than storing ICE cars.
Okay.
For example, years ago, we had a storage facility, a consignment sales operation, actually, up in the Bay Area. And we got wind of the fact that suddenly there were 3 brick Roadsters that all got bricked at the same time.
Can you just quickly explain to people what bricked means?
Bricked, yes.
I know, but
in the EV world, when you don't charge particular cars, and the Tesla Roadster really is the only one that I'm aware of. Let me preface that.
Yeah.
Later, the designs did accommodate not charging a car, and it wouldn't kill the car. But with a Tesla Roadster, if you don't charge that for a couple, 3 months, you let it get to 0% state of charge, eventually it will no longer allow a charge through the Tesla charge port door.
So it's like if you were in a room, like in a James Bond film, and all the doors went down, like you can't get out. You're just stuck. You're
stuck. Yeah, you've lost power or whatever it is. Yeah. So that's what brick means, and it comes from the term that there are 99 bricks in a Tesla Roadster, and typically you will lose some of these bricks because with lithium-ion cells, if they get below 2 volt state of charge, then you have a chemical reaction that takes place that is destructive, and you may not be able to recover. So there were 3 Tesla Roadsters that were bricked, and they had simply forgotten to charge them. And again, this is probably because you can sit an ICE vehicle there and let it sit there for 2 years and you're going to be able to start that. Maybe you've got some varnished gasoline, but that's about the extent of it.
Yeah.
Well, with these Roadsters, they ended up coming to us, and we ended up fixing one of them, put another one on the road, and then sold one of them as is.
Okay.
In our facility, we're going to have mechanisms and we're going to have monitoring systems that continuously read the car's state of charge and what the car, there's a vehicle management system in the car. And with an OVMS system, Open Vehicle Management System, we're going to be able to continuously read key parameters in that Tesla Roadster, including the customer being able to read it on their cell phone.
It's kind of like it's on life support.
Exactly.
Well, it's not on life support because it hasn't died. But you can see it's like having like a Apple Watch or something as well, or like a Nest camera all in one.
Yeah, like an IV, for example.
Yeah.
You're continuously feeding it what it requires to
Right.
maintain its state of charge and to stay alive. We'll have monitoring screens inside a control room. It'll be monitored 24/7. And there will be an area, like you mentioned, for someone to come. You know what? I just realized it'd be a great idea to have a cigar lounge.
Yeah. Do you smoke cigars?
I don't smoke many of them, probably a dozen times a year, but it'd be
Right.
great to go somewhere, have some decent cognac, coffee, maybe some scotch, and a good cigar. You know?
If you go to, isn't there a special way of like you have a cigar room and the way they deal with the air and everything? That's
totally, yeah.
Total.
Yeah.
Because people have cigar rooms in their homes and stuff as well.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, these are nice homes that I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they have wine cellars too, come to think of it.
Yeah.
Well, we won't have that much space. At least not
Steakhouse. You
for
could
the
do a
wine.
steakhouse to hold your wine.
We'll send them down to Angie's over
Gruber
here.
steaks.
Yeah. So it will be specifically tailored and geared to storing the Tesla Roadsters.
Okay. That's where it's going to start with that, and then you don't know where it's going to go from there, but you're opening it, and it's ready to roll. When do you think this will open?
We're under construction right now. The drywall is going to go up within the next couple of weeks, and it's going to be drywalled all throughout the storage area and the office areas. And what has delayed everything is the regulators, the city of Phoenix, and we're putting sprinklers in there. For example, that took 6 months. They actually have to trench across the street, and then you have to have multiple inspections. And but we think that by spring of next year it'll be operational.
Well, I think that you might have done like a TikTok or like some kind of stories on you were like standing outside on the road and you said, this is the largest digger or something. I can't remember what it was.
It was the largest vacuum cleaner.
That's it, vacuum cleaner.
Vacuum cleaner. And they were actually, instead of using a track hoe or a backhoe to get the dirt out of the channel, they were using a vacuum cleaner. And the reason they were doing that was, and this is probably true with some of the older cities, I don't know if it's quicker, but it prevents any damage to the existing pipes and all of the underground, infrastructure.
So it's like sucking the dirt out. You're seeing everything that you're going through.
Exactly, and
rather than hitting things and stuff.
With like new construction, these things are very well mapped, and you get blue stake out, and they'll show you exactly where your water lines are, power lines, sewer lines, all that. But if it's over 25 to 50 to 100 years, you have no idea anymore what's underneath there. And that was one way for them to avoid that.
Right. That's interesting. So I'm probably going to name this episode "Talking Tesla" with Pete Gruber, right? Talking Tesla. So if you would talk, if say you were just at dinner and Tesla popped up, obviously you could go, I know a little bit about that. If we were just specifically talking about Tesla, and I think most people by now know that Elon Musk came on board, but he didn't start Tesla. He kind of came on board. So maybe we could do like, I don't know, real quick, kind of like
a history.
History of Tesla, like how it started, how Elon came on board, and obviously the Roadster was like it was a Lotus Elise kind of chassis, right? And they kind of electrified that. That was the Roadster. And actually, one more thing that you said was really interesting on, I think it was one of the podcasts this week that I listened to, that I heard you say, was that the Roadster was really meant to be it was a proof of concept car. But if you think most people, when they do proof of concept car, they might do one, and they might do maybe 1 to 3 proof of concept. But the Roadster ended up being like maybe like 2,500 because he had this following where he could like, hey, does anyone want to buy one of these? Right. So I'm kind of like, you should be saying this rather than me, but that's kind of what I'm getting. But when you said proof of concept, I found that really, really interesting because it's a 2,500 proof of concept because 2,500 people wanted them.
Well, I'll try to make it brief.
Okay.
All right. First of all, EVs have been around for over 100 years. In 1907, the taxi cabs in the city of New York outnumbered ICE vehicles. They were lead acid batteries.
You do
DC
see those,
charging.
the old footage, don't you? And people
yeah.
like think it's amazing, or they think like, anyone dissing EVs, they'll use that like, it didn't work then and it's not going to work now.
And it had something to do with, remember how you say you have to crank the engines?
Yeah.
And the ladies couldn't crank it quite well enough. And there was some kickback. It was dangerous. And then Bendix came along and made the Bendix starter. And now you could, with a key switch, actually start your car. And suddenly electric vehicles began to recede. And then Henry Ford reduced the price so much on his cars that they couldn't produce EVs anymore. So you go 100 years into the future, GM comes out with an EV1.
That's a big story in itself.
It is. 1,500 or so were built. They would only lease them. They wouldn't sell them. And a couple of years later, they said, there's no future here. And in fact, that's probably one of the historic comments made by the CEO at the time of GM. And they crushed them all, except for a couple that went to a school and a college, I think. So fast forward another 10 years or so. This is 1995 time frame. All right. Here we have Martin Eberhard. And you know how these successful businessmen oftentimes start something and then sell it? He had an e-books business, and he decided, okay, I'm done with this. It was interesting. He was using lithium-ion batteries in an e-book type reader.
Okay.
And he sold it. He was flush with cash, and he always loved sports cars. Then he heard about a car called a T0 made by AC Propulsion Systems. They only built 3 of them. This was truly a proof of concept vehicle. They had a federal grant. They had no more funding to build a 4th, 5th, or 6th. And he heard about this car at Laguna Seca pulling down 4-second 0 to 60 time slips on this track. And he went out to see them and said, wow, this is a cool sports car. Are you going to build this? And they said, no, we're an engineering company. He said, do you mind if I do it? They said, no, we'll even give you a test mule. So then he went out, him and actually Mark Tarpening by that point, and they started looking for car manufacturers that would sell them empty chassis sports car frames that they could electrify using the T0 drivetrain. And at that point, Lotus stepped up to the plate. They said, yep, we'll sell you 2,400 of them. And that's what started the Tesla Roadster.
I wonder if that was the minimum order. You know, like someone orders from China and it's like, you can have them, but our minimum order and well, what is it? You're hoping maybe say 3 and they go 2,400.
And even 2,400 was difficult because as they try to get parts for the Tesla Roadster, you go to a vendor and you say, I want 2,400 or even 5,000. They laugh at you. You've got to get up into the hundreds of thousands to meet the scale of economies necessary to get it to a reasonable price point. But anyway, that's really what started Tesla, was the notion that you could electrify a Lotus Elise, which was a serious miscalculation, by the way.
And it was just the first opportunity, wasn't it? It was like, you can do this, but you didn't think that, you could do it with something else.
And it turns out Martin was not willing to take his entire bankroll that he got from selling the e-books business, and he went out to, venture capitalists, and he was looking for investment partners, and that's when Elon came in. He initially put, I think, $11 million into the company. And
Martin did, or?
No, this is Elon now.
Okay.
And but it was hands off. He said, all right, I'll give you 11 mil. It's an interesting concept, but I've got other things to do.
Yeah.
And then he came back in later on.
Okay.
So when I say serious miscalculation, they couldn't fit the 1,000-pound battery pack into the Lotus Elise. They had to change the frame. When they changed the frame, they had to change all the body panels. Now they had to go to another manufacturer to make those because Lotus was making Lotus Elise panels.
Yeah.
They went to Satir in France. They got custom body panels. But now you're beginning to see that the original cost projections, which I'm sure were done properly done, were going way into orbit, and it no longer looked sustainable. And
did you think so the guys that started Tesla, they were almost like maybe they got 11 million from Elon, and then they're doing this, and then it started. Maybe they felt like the boat was sinking, even though it's a car, and maybe they didn't have the passion or something. And then what happened next? So like Elon.
Well, I've talked to Martin, a number of times, and it's not that the passion wasn't there. It was, well, first of all, at one point, Elon let him go and ousted him from the company. And, there's a lot of contention around that issue, so I won't get into details.
Right. It just happens with partnerships and stuff.
Yes, yeah. But to address your original question, who were the first two guys at Tesla? And it was Martin Eberhard and Mark Tarpenning.
Okay.
And then Elon, kept the company alive, poured his heart and soul in it. And I firmly believe Tesla would not be where it is today without Elon's tenacity and his patience. And, I'm not sure patience is the right word, though.
He's got to have some patience or longevity, right? Like he knows, like
dedication. Yeah. That's the word I'm looking for. Yeah.
Yeah. So at that point in history, he was also doing SpaceX as well, and he had an island, and he did 2 or 3 launches. There's a very good documentary in the UK that you can find on YouTube. Like it's a 4 or 5 part kind of series. So he's doing Tesla, he's doing SpaceX, he's spending a fortune on SpaceX, a fortune on Tesla, and literally the story comes. It's a bit like the Apple thing, where like they may have to go bankrupt unless something happens, right? So what happened at that point? Because obviously SpaceX and Tesla are doing very well now, but at that point, it was all dedication. It was all Elon's money. I guess he had to go out and find other money to make it work.
There were some additional rounds of funding. Are
there some like key guys that don't get mentioned that much? Like I can remember in this documentary there was one guy that's almost like he was the guy that really believed in Elon and really put a lot of money in it. And then he's in that finance world, and he was able to bring a lot more people in. But I can't remember the guy's name.
They were all risk takers at the time, because the life cycle of a new car company is virtually non-existent, or very brief. Let's put it that way. And at one point, Elon said he had to make a decision. He knew that the chances of either company surviving were much improved if he worked on only one. But he wanted to keep both Tesla and SpaceX alive. And the analogy he draws is, it's like children. You can't play favorites. You can't let one die and let the other one live. But there were additional rounds of funding. For example, Daimler. Tesla at one point had the vision that the smart car, the little 2-seater smart car that you see buzzing around Europe, would be a great car to electrify. Get rid of that 3-cycle engine and put something electric in there. Well, you couldn't buy them in the United States at the time because they hadn't been approved yet for sale. So he sent one of the technicians with a fistful of cash down to Mexico City. And he said, buy one of these and bring it back up here, drive it back up here. We're going to electrify it. And
it must have looked funny, the trip from Mexico into America in this tiny vehicle. Must have been funny.
So they get this car, and sure enough, it was fairly simple to do something like a Tesla Roadster drivetrain. Since it's so light and small, the thing actually popped wheelies.
Yeah, imagine.
So, and of course, now this is story, legend, and probably combinations of the two, but there happened to be some Daimler engineers that had come to the United States for a trade show or whatever. Tesla somehow convinced them that they should come out and see them, and they did. And the story goes like this. They were in a conference room. They had put together a wonderful PowerPoint presentation with the final caveat, or the final show being the showing them this car, right, that they had electrified.
Yeah.
Well, they noticed that these guys were jet lagged. They were hungover from, the trade show. I mean, these things are usually junkets. I used to do them myself. I know how it goes. And they were falling asleep. So at one point, Elon looks at them. He says, okay, enough. Kill the PowerPoint. Let's go out in the warehouse. I want to show you guys something. Not only did he show them the smart car, they didn't realize it was electrified yet, apparently, but he handed them the keys and he said, go take this thing around the block, see what it'll do. Well, they had the EV grin on their face after driving this car, including popping wheelies. And
I never knew it was a smart car.
Yeah. And they went back, of course, to Germany. And, the story got passed around Daimler, and Daimler became very interested in this. And
That's a big company.
yeah. And there was a $50 million cash position taken in Tesla at the time, which, according to legend, again, saved Tesla. I mean, they were right on the cusp of bankruptcy at that point in time.
You know what 50 million was in terms of percentage, or is that not
It
public
was like
knowledge?
10 or 11% at the time, I think. Yeah.
I think just staying on that smart car thing, like obviously being in Europe, smaller roads, you need smaller cars. I mean, I can remember being in Leicester once in England and seeing a Ford F-150, and it looked like a monster truck. A Ford F-150 here would be like a Mini here.
Yeah,
you know?
and you couldn't drive it in the old town portions because the streets are too narrow.
And if you did, then you'd be scratching the sides.
Right.
And, like when you go into car parks and you see all the scratches on the side around the corners and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
You'd get plenty of that. I think the coolest thing with the smart car, or the biggest pitch for the smart car, maybe you can see it on YouTube or something like that, but the width and the length are more or less the same. But what I thought was the coolest thing with those really small cars, and obviously there's quite a lot of them now, is that in Europe you have to reverse park right on the road. So you have to like go and then reverse in with your car.
Right, yeah.
But with these smart cars, you don't. You just drive into the space between the two cars. And I thought that was the biggest sell for it.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, you don't have to parallel park.
No,
You
it's parallel parking. That's
yeah,
it. You don't
you
have to
just
do
pull
that.
in.
Yeah, you just
Right.
go straight in between the gap.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think they ever did that as a marketing thing.
No, there are even cars now that can crab walk into a space so you don't have
Yeah.
to do any turning, you know?
That is crazy. Yeah, and there are cars that do self parallel parking anyway, right? Where you can just it does it itself.
Personally, I can't wait until the day that there are no more steering wheels in cars. Not because I don't like to drive, it's because it's getting damn dangerous out there.
I think so. Before we set this podcast up, I was speaking to Jesse, your producer, and he was mentioning something like no steering wheels. Am I right in saying that, Jesse? Like, I don't know if you can chime in.
Yeah, no, that's Elon's stated goal. He's tweeted a couple times about it, that he wants to see a future here soon with no steering wheels at all.
Yeah, so I would, being like a racing car guy into racing and stuff, whether it's simulator or real thing or just, as a kid, all through my life, you got like this, even as a kid in a cardboard box, you're going,
Right.
So explain a little bit how that's going to be like push no steering wheel to the general public.
It won't be our generation.
Okay.
It's like you know,
Another 100 years or something. Or...
Yeah, I think so. Well, they won't even know how to drive. They won't
would
know how
be
to
there?
type. You know, there are many things that will go away. There'll be no more collision shops. It'll be unnecessary. Traffic signals. What's the point? You have AI. You have self-driving cars. They know where each other where they are.
Yeah.
You know.
I guess before airbag technology is amazing now, right? But when there weren't airbags, or it just came out of the steering wheel, or didn't, millions of people probably lost their lives hitting the steering wheel.
You ate the steel dash.
Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, we had a 1960 Chevy Impala that my wife fell in love with, 36,000 original miles. It had a front seat that was the size of our living room couch.
Yeah.
It was 20 foot long, right? And it had a steel dash and no seat belts.
It's crazy. Like you go around corners real quick and you had four people, everyone would be sliding into you, then kind of sliding back.
And you kind of thought about it as you were driving it. What if I get into an accident? Because we're so used to seat belts and all of the safety and the the airbags and all that.
Yeah.
In this car, it was sobering because that ran through your mind. Back when I was a kid, you never thought about those things, and you never thought about the people that were smoking inside the cabin.
I was going to mention smoking
winter.
next.
Yeah. Talk about secondhand smoke.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and if you're a woman doing your makeup, you've got the cigarette in your mouth, people are sliding on your seat.
Those were the days. Don't you miss those?
I don't know. I'll tell you a funny story. It's a real quick story that my parents remember doing, and they feel really bad about it. But I think it's just a normal thing then. So they used to plop. I think they just plopped the whatever I was in. I was just like on the floor.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, how dangerous is that if you're in a crash, you know? Like, you'd get arrested for that now.
Oh, I remember when my uncle had a small beetle bug that he brought over from Germany. And when we had a lot of people in the car, there was enough room in the passenger footwell where I would sit.
Yeah.
Yeah, the entire trip.
I can remember going into Beatles, like, when I'm, like, 17, 18 years old. And it's a bit like, how many people can you get in there to go to the pub or something?
Right. Yeah, to the pub, right. But yeah, things are going to change rapidly, I think. And yeah, it won't be our generation that will not be driving. I think, if anything, if they ban it completely, we'll probably have race courses that we can go to get that out of our system.
Yeah. Well, there might be roads where you can go on, like, like the Autobahn, you can go, like, over 100 miles an hour. Maybe there'll be roads, new roads that are built that you can use that technology. And on the smaller roads, like driving around neighborhoods where kids are playing and stuff like that, they won't allow it.
Right.
Maybe it'd be something like that. Someone's going to build, there's going to be someone, I always said, like, if I was a trillionaire or something, I would just build my own roads.
Right. Yeah.
So no one else can go on them, right?
Right.
But I guess then it's better to just get a helicopter or a plane by then.
Oh, yeah. I mean, vertical takeoff and landing vehicles, the airspaces will actually be transportation methods. So have you ever driven on the Autobahn?
I've been on it. I think I was, then I came to America. So I think I was too young to do it. I've been on it. I haven't personally driven on it.
So you haven't piloted a car on the
No,
Autobahn?
and I think, like, I actually do, when I'm by myself, I do drive fast. When I have people in the car, I don't. And even some people think that I'm driving too fast but when I have people in the car, I really do go, like, I'm like the captain. I've got to get everyone to the door. I'm driving really safe. But by myself, I drive fast. So I think if I went on somewhere like that, especially when I was young, I could be one of the statistics where I just went too crazy and just drove too fast. And, that's why, like with racing, I never raced as a kid. Like, me and my brother wanted to, like, race go-karts and stuff like that. My dad was a Formula 2, Formula 3 racing car driver where they didn't have seatbelts even then. Formula 2, Formula 3 back then, like, the most famous guy he would have raced was Jackie Stewart, who's still alive today as well. Same age, like 90 years old. But I think, like, as a race, if I went on a go-kart, I mean, I've been go-kart racing, right? The inside stuff. I'm like the maniac guy that has to overtake everyone, and I'm willing to crash as well. So
there's an interesting statistic.
I wouldn't make a good racer. Like, I'd be one of the stats. That guy sadly died because he was a maniac.
In the U.S., we have freeways, of course.
Yeah.
And the highest speeds I'm aware of is like 75, maybe 80 miles an hour or so. Do you know that the fatality and the accident rate on U.S. freeways is higher than the Autobahn, where they're allowed to do twice the speed? And there's a fundamental reason for that. In the United States, the crappy drivers teach the next generation. In Germany, you have to go to a school and you're taught by professionals.
Yeah.
And of course, they're very disciplined anyway, zipping into the merge lanes. It's done like clockwork. And the lane discipline on the Autobahn is strictly adhered to. You're not going to get anybody that's absent-mindedly hogging the passing lane and, causing people to go around them on the right. So I find that statistic interesting. So I think it's an education thing with this driving.
I think, yeah, you're right. I also think, though, that there are basic things you need to do or to be a good driver, and you need to know what's going on around you. I don't think many people use a rear view mirror. They don't see what's behind them. I think that's the case, because if someone's in the fast lane and you're coming up to them, they never move out the way. They're either flippantly, like, driving to annoy you, and that's what they like to do every day when they drive, or they're not looking in the rear view mirror and they have no idea you're behind them. When I'm in Phoenix, I have driven to Vegas a number of times. I love driving through the desert, like to Vegas, to Los Angeles, like when I'm out here, and you see a lot of this. And but I think also the other thing is, in the UK, if you fly to the UK now and rented a car, and you wanted the cheapest one, and then you go and pick it up, it will be manual. They still do manual cars. It would be the cheapest car. You'll get in the manual. Now, if you're in the States, not many people know how to drive a stick. To learn how to drive one, you can't really do it in one go. It's all clutch control is the key thing, right? Clutch control and handbrake, and all these steep hills in London and stuff. So there is a skill to it. When I came to America to get my driving license, I just went in a car park and drove around a few times and got my license. When I got my driving license in the UK, it was a manual car, so I had to learn how to drive a stick, which for me was about 8 lessons to then say, I think I'm good enough to go for the lesson, right? That's like 8 1-hour driving lessons, 8 hours of driving. Can you imagine like going on a 12-hour flight from LA to London, getting your rental car, never driven a stick, jet lagged, and get on the English roads and drive on the other side, and you're actually in the passenger seat when you're driving there as well.
For those of us used to, left-hand driving, is it right-hand or left-hand driving? I guess here in this country,
Here's
it would
left.
Be left, yeah. Just driving on the Piccadilly buses between, the airport and London, we had a layover there.
Okay.
Spooked the heck out of me. I kept thinking he's driving on the wrong side of the road, And of course, I was jet lagged, which intensified that, that paranoia. But I don't know if I could drive on a right-hand drive road.
It really is easy. I mean,
it is.
I've done it. So when you've learned how to drive learn how to cycle.
Yeah.
You can just jump on a bike.
Right.
It's the same thing, but there is a bit of danger because the first left or right that you take, you could end up driving on the wrong side of the road. That happens a lot.
Okay.
And even the first couple of days, you might make a turn and be on the wrong side of the road.
Sure.
So, I mean, you're going to have a head-on collision, and it's not going to be a good situation.
Takes some getting used to.
Yeah. So going back to the smart car, I really didn't know that they electrified a smart car, and that's kind of crazy. And that was the pitch. The cool thing was it was their car, right? So they could get excited about what they had done. So there's a lot. So they're excited. They put 50 million in. Kind of what happens next?
Well, it allowed Tesla to continue to work on what they call the White Star project, which was the Tesla Model S.
Okay.
And, there's a lot of conjecture about this, but they finally figured out, according to legend, that they were selling the Tesla Roadster under cost. And as you know, in business, you're not going to survive very long when you do that.
Yeah.
What they needed was a sustainable car. And it wasn't going to be a 2-seater, brightly colored sports car that was already being sold under cost. It was going to be a 4-door grocery getter sedan for the masses, for mom and dad and the family and, all of that. And that's what the Model S exemplified. They had the foresight to hire Franz von Holzhausen, great designer.
I wouldn't be able to say that name. You have to tell me that about 5 times, and then I'll be able to say it. Say it one more time.
Franz von Holzhausen actually means from a wood house.
Okay.
Holz is wood and Hausen is house, of course. But he settled on an award-winning design, which at the time it came out won a number of accolades. If you remember, there was one, and I forget the name of the magazine. It's a very popular one. But they had never in the history of this magazine unanimously agreed, all the judges, which car was going to be their car of the year. The Tesla Model S was that car. It was a unanimous, hands-down decision.
Was it like an American sports magazine, like Motor Trend or something like that?
Like Cars and Carcraft, something like that. Yeah. In fact, it's one of the larger ones. If we had some fact checkers here, we could probably
we have. We've got Jesse in the background.
Yeah, I'll see what I can find.
All right, appreciate it. So, but yeah, they hit it out of the park.
Yeah.
Whether that was luck, whether it was by design, who cares? Right. They had some talented people, and anyway, they pulled through. The other thing I find about Tesla is, I was just at an event last night, actually. We were talking about the difficulty of hiring and keeping mechanics, engineers in a company that is in a field where there's a tremendous demand and a shortage of talent. And so he was saying, this was the Tesla service manager, we lose people to Rivian, they get poached. And I said, I know it's frustrating. He says, well, not really. And I've heard this a couple of times from the Tesla insiders, especially a corporate. The overall goal here is to transition and get rid of fossil fuel burners. And however that is achieved is more important than the annoyances of losing people at times.
So that's still like, if that was like on the whiteboard first day one, they still keep that mentality.
Exactly. It's part of their culture.
Yeah.
And, we talk about that often because in the traditional business mentality, your competitor is an adversary.
Right.
And and you need to do everything possible to prevent them from being successful. And you have to watch your back constantly. Nothing could be further from the truth. Successful business people recognize that you can turn any competitor into an ally, whether it's a vendor, whether it's a customer.
Yeah. I think also like, okay, yeah, your best people could get poached, but then also your best people that you train could be your competitors. Like they can start a company from what they've learned from whoever they've worked with. That happens in every business,
And it's initially frustrating because you have to go out and you have to recruit again and you have to put ads out. And then when you get someone, you have a learning curve issue and they're going to make some mistakes and all that. But I find it really refreshing, that mentality, because we've been in business 40 years and we have these large, huge OEM competitors. And I can assure you that they are the exact opposite of Tesla, including even dirty tricks like in critical power. They're obligated to sell you parts, but they'll make it very difficult for you to get those parts, knowing that you've got a piece of equipment down, a service contract that's in jeopardy, there's downtime, and they play games with lead times and surcharges. One of them is notorious. They would say, yeah, we've got the part that you need in order to get that customer back up and running. Well, good. Can you send it to us? Well, it's in stock, but there's a surcharge, a 50% surcharge if you want it right away. In 2 weeks, it'll be at that MSRP, which is already bloated, right? Anyway, I didn't mean it on a rant.
And that 50% could, will chip into like, oh, maybe that's your profit or something. I don't know. But like they're not making it easy.
In the case of a service agreement, there is no profit. What you have is it's like the insurance business. You have a loss that you have to resolve.
Actually, so for me, on the electronic side of Gruber, don't need to go into the history of it. But what is are you offering with the Gruber electronic side? Is it a service? Is it a product? Is it both? Like you're saying, like. What's the space there? Well, I guess what's the business model?
I'll try to make it a short story.
Yeah.
Been in electronics since I was in high school.
Okay.
As a kid even, right? Worked in a radio shop in high school. Loved electronics. By the time I moved out here in 1975, I finally got a job with a computer manufacturer, Digital Equipment Corporation, because I saw that was the future. It was no longer about radios and TVs and fixing this and fixing appliances.
Did you really think that young, like, oh, this is the future?
It's always been our vision to stay at the forefront of technology. That's why we're so sold on artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
There's no doubt in our minds that this is the future, a huge future.
Okay.
So anyway, went to work for the computer manufacturer, spent 10 years there, spent the last 3 years in pre-sales support, teaching the customers that were buying gigantic mainframes that filled entire buildings how to prepare for this purchase. Power, air, how much air conditioning they're going to need, how much fire suppression, access floor cabling, and all that. Found that there were no qualified contractors here locally to turn the customers over to once I did the design. And that was the genesis of Gruber Associates at the time.
Okay.
But I was too small at the time to actually get a contractor's license to construction. So we started doing data cabling and eventually built into those other, disciplines, designing and building computer rooms. Well, from that,
computer rooms for like
big mainframes.
Okay.
Yeah. Gigantic machines that, this was before distributed processing when you had a computer at your desktop.
Okay.
You had a dumb terminal at best at your desktop, and you had a printer that you shared through, AV switch boxes, because they're very expensive. But from there, the other businesses just evolved, and always having a keen eye for opportunity. All right, here's a simple one. We were selling power conditioners to clean up the power in computer rooms, and one night, one of them went down at Kaibab Industries here in Phoenix at 4 o'clock. The manufacturer was already having supper. They were in Troy, Michigan. So they said, we're down. What can you do? So we sent one of our electricians out, just as a warm body to appease the customer. He ended up fixing the damn thing. It was a fuse. It was something simple.
Right.
Within a few days, we get a call from the customer saying, this is a critical piece of equipment. We need a service contract for this. Do you have those available? And of course, in sales, you never say no. You say yes, and then you find a way to do it.
That's what my dad taught me, my brother. Like, if you like, my brother did contracting, and it's like he's bidding jobs and stuff, and there may be like, how can I do 3 jobs in one? And my dad said, whatever you do not say no to any of them, and then you work it out after.
That's right.
Yeah.
So from there, today we're a nationwide service provider, independent maintenance, and the advantage we have is unlike the OEMs, which are monolithic, they can only work on APC, Powerware, Liebert, or Vertiv. We work on all the brands. So when we come in to do preventive maintenance, there's only 1 day of downtime or half a day of downtime as we do everything. The old traditional method was they have to bring in every manufacturer. They face the risk of more downtime. But that was just one business that spawned from keeping an eye on an opportunity and then capitalizing on it.
All right, hey guys, I got a quick update for you here. What we were talking about earlier, that first ever unanimous decision by those judges was from Motor Trend, and I have a statement here real quick that I'll read. It says, Motor Trend this week named the Tesla Model S its 2013 Car of the Year, making it the first ever electric vehicle to take home the award and the first winner by unanimous decision. In announcing this award, the editor-at-large Angus McKenzie described the Model S as one of the quickest four-door sedans ever built, noting that it drives like a sports car, it is effortlessly as smooth as a Rolls-Royce, and is fuel efficient as a Toyota Prius.
I still remember when that came out. This is 2013, mind you. At that point, Tesla had not become a threat yet to the U.S. auto manufacturers. They were still thinking, they're not going to, they're not going to make it.
Right.
They're not a real car company. Who wants electric cars? That type of thing. Well, this event was like a mic drop for the entire globe.
Drives like a Rolls Royce. I don't know what a Rolls Royce drives like, but that's a good statement.
Yeah. First time ever unanimous decision, and I remember that was one of the things that put Tesla on the map.
Actually, so when I was following Tesla, I remember seeing things where Tesla got a lot of government help and a lot, like monetary wise as well. Tens of millions, I think, or hundreds of millions. And they did repay back the money.
Yes.
Well, when ICE companies have had money or given money in the past, I don't know if it's the majority, but a number of them don't pay them.
Oh, no, they didn't. Yeah, they didn't. In fact, Tesla got just under $500 million. It was like 480 million or something like that. And they were annoyed by the interest payments. And they had some cash flow. Yeah, and they had some cash flow by then. So Elon said, let's get rid of this debt. And there was a lot of regulation. When you have a loan like that, they crawl all over you. And you don't have the freedoms that you do.
But like doing little tests, like if you own a restaurant, like people just coming in and going in your kitchen, and you don't want them there.
No, not at all. Yeah. But you're right. The other auto manufacturers, they don't repay, they don't repay their loans.
Yeah. Thanks a lot for that, Jesse. So I was right picking Motor Trend, but Motor Trend is like the big name magazine in the States. Yeah, so I just went for the obvious.
So tell me about all of this product that you have here, 3D print product.
Yeah, well, I thought it was worth just bringing along because, we're right now, battle-proof motors, or people that have invested in battle-proof motors, we're in the EV space. We are an EV company, so I would say that we're tech and we want to push this forward. I'm a fan of Tesla and Apple and technology. Through the pandemic, it was the time to start the company. That's when I started the company. Being an off-road, slightly different, but yeah, 3D printing, like now you kind of like laugh at 3D printing a little bit because it would look like it's been 3D printed and everything. But essentially you can 3D print anything, here, if you hold this, the body of the battle-approved vehicle, this is just like full one body. It would be in more parts than that in real life. But essentially, like, that's a good site, that could be like a mouse for someone, I'll put like some electronics in there and make it a mouse. It can be like Hot Wheels size car. Now, the way that we're thinking, but now we've started doing this 3D printing. So like this would be like the whole dash of the inside. So like the key, we have this special key that will be fingerprint technology that will fit in here. Like this would be like kind of like, you know, like where the dash would be like an iPad type thing. And this would be the whole, like, would you still call that the dash, the top bit?
I think so.
Yeah, it's all dash. So at the moment, it's just all in one piece. But again, it can be any size. So we have this, small. So now we're saying two words that we've just come up with ourselves. I don't know if it's a slogan for a company, but anything is possible. That's 3 words, actually. Anything is possible. Anything is possible. So yeah, I just wanted to bring this along because I do know, like, watching the Roadster videos that you guys do, that parts that if something goes, well, not if something goes wrong, it's more wear and tear over time, that it may have to be replaced. And there could be certain parts that aren't made anymore. And so I'm thinking, like, I'm sure Gruber are doing 3D printing as well. And I'm kind of right in saying that, or you just started doing it or something?
Oh, yeah, very much so. You know, in the Tesla Roadster world, there are a number of reasons why parts are no longer being made. The original molds are no longer available. Now, remember, Tesla was going through some gyrations with near bankruptcy type issues. And a lot of the things, or some of the things regarding Tesla Roadster were lost. They needed additional space. Well, now you got a decision to make. Is a Model 3 more important than a Roadster? Well, definitely. Right. That's our future, or the Model S for that matter.
Okay, yeah.
So when space requirements were important, what do you think got thrown away? All right? Roadster stuff, right?
Discontinued.
Yes. And you had, there were design issues. For example, this is the 3-phase AC induction motor block that is inside the power electronics module, and there are 3 big heavy wires that connect the 3-phase AC induction motor to the electronics inside the power electronics module.
Okay.
Well, this was originally made out of black ABS plastic. It was not designed to be continuously disconnected and connected, because like in your electrical panel in your house, it goes in once, they mount the meter, and then all you do is flip circuit breakers.
Yeah.
You no longer have to disconnect big, heavy wires.
Right.
Well, in a Roadster, you have to do this every year for your annual. And not only was this black ABS plastic aging and getting brittle and old, but you were constantly torquing and untorquing, you know, connections, which would then break this and eventually make it crumble.
Okay.
So what we ended up doing was not only redesigning it so that now the wires connect directly to the bus bars behind it, which is metal, and no more plastic is involved other than to insulate. But we also ended up putting in things like brass PEM nuts instead of using self-tapping screws into plastic.
Okay.
You know, that's a short-lived arrangement if you're constantly taking it in and out. And then the final thing we did was, since the world began to adopt color codes for EV vehicles, orange being high voltage and the rest of the colors being low voltage, 12 volts, we made these orange now instead of black ABS plastic. Same is true for the DC input block. But 3D printing is a marvel of engineering in my estimation. And like you were saying, I mean, the scale that you can do now has become much larger than just little items on a table like this.
Yeah, I think there's a printer that we use. It's called Bamboo Labs, and I think it's the Carbon X1. And it's really, really good. It's almost like a $400,000 printer, like for your home. But it has to be done like, you know, certain colors, right? You can merge the colors. But then actually there's a company, I'll give them a shout out actually. There's a local company called PADT. So P for Peter, A for Apple, D for Delta, T for Tommy, PADT. They're down in Tempe and they do 3D printing. And they've got, you know, they can print any size, but I took a visit there and they have printers that are like $400,000, which is more than a $1,500 bamboo printer. Why would you need to use a $400,000 one? Well, one, you can print anything like up 4 foot by 4 foot, so it's a lot bigger. And 2, you can start utilizing like better materials. You can start going into metals and things like that.
Really?
Yeah, yeah.
3D?
Yeah, yeah. It's really good. And then they kind of showed me some case studies when I met them up on the board. And there are some really interesting case studies, you know, race teams that are like, so they sell these or lease them as well. But then their business model isn't just to sell you $400,000, because not many people can do that. So you can start small. So starting small, like you can start at home And like you guys, you can get more printers, but then you might find, oh, we become a 3D printing business for everyone locally, or we're only doing our own stuff. It really depends what road you want to take. But the cool thing about these, like, you know, I was saying, like, anything is possible with 3D printing now. So 3D printing, when I first saw it, it looked kind of clunky and it looked like it was 3D printed. Now you can print any material. This isn't the perfect example because this was like a rough prototype or something, but we could make that as clean as this JBL speaker. Like if you feel the weight of that and how like it's a matte finish,
smooth,
really nice and smooth. We could do this battle approved body that size and make it a desk weight, you know, like a paperweight for people's desks, right? But that can be 3D printed, and that isn't 3D printed. That was from a mold, but we could 3D print and choose the same material, and we could do a JBL speaker just like that, and you wouldn't know the difference.
Fascinating.
Yeah. And one of their case studies that I found really interesting from racing, because I've got a racing background through my dad, did BMX as a kid, and obviously how I got into off-road was filming kids that do off-road racing between 12 and 15 years old, driving 100 miles an hour in mini trophy trucks.
Really?
That's how I got into off-road and all these race families, and like so I kind of like, a bit like you, I'm going towards my passion and hopefully making a business out of it, I guess. But yeah, 3D printing has got a long way to go. But yeah, that case study on the racing, they were showing professional race teams, like, I don't think it was Mercedes, but it would be a big team like that. And they had at least, you know, they had enough work and enough money to like get this $400,000 printer. So they're printing, like, if they need carbon fiber body, they do all the parts in that, like bits in metal that may go like from the A-arm to wherever. They could, so you mentioned molds. You don't need to do molds now.
Yeah.
Remember, like, back in the day, like, so I was in the record business in the 80s, and we were printing records, and you could just the technology that went in back then that went into printing the I can't even remember.
The LP album, or
just the label,
right?
Just the label itself. Someone had to have the right machine to do the label, and then you have to do all the graphics. The graphics.
Yeah.
It wasn't like it is now, where it's just like a one-stop shop.
No, you actually had artists back then that used to draw this stuff manually.
It was like there's about 8 steps to like printing that one label that goes on the record.
My God, we got a Croy machine in the mid '80s, which was a large label printer.
Okay.
And that was a major move up. You know, it was expensive as heck too. But
I think 70s, 80s, and 90s, everything was like a major this and a major that.
Yeah.
But like now, so if you're a kid now and you get given an iPhone at whatever age you get given it, you are literally you can become an Elon Musk by the time you're 10.
Yeah. By
Don't you
the
think?
time you're 10.
By the time you're 10, you could start your own electronic company or something, you know. But yeah, very interesting to talk about 3D printing. I think like maybe the last thing, or there's 2 things I just wanted to bring up. I think so I hear the 2 words battery bunker.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's like what you call it or that's what it's called. What is this battery bunker that's at Gruber?
Well, we've had 2 fires here.
Okay.
And the first fire was clearly a mistake on our part in that we were overcharging a Tesla Roadster battery. It was not like you could go to the library back then and figure out how to charge, lithium-ion cells. There was just not very much information available, and we have always been an R&D type lab. So here we were,
research and development folks. R&D.
So here we were charging a 1,000-pound battery pack and trickling in more DC than we should have, unaware of the fact that once a lithium-ion chemistry goes south, that there's nothing you can do to bring it back once it's resistive. And anyway, we thought, we were kind of arrogant. We thought, well, we're R&D people. We can do this. Well, anyway, that thing caught fire, and it burned down our first building.
Was that like during the day or at nighttime or?
It was interesting. We were charging it for a number of days, and the final day, Friday actually, May 5th, 2017, I remember that date well.
So say May the 13th, Friday.
It began ticking in the morning, and the pack was closed, and it takes a bit of work to take one apart, we thought, well, let's back away on the charge. In fact, by noon, we took the charge off completely, but it continued to tick. It was like a little ticking time bomb tick.
I was going to say, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And
basically, it was a warning that you didn't listen to.
in retrospect, we think what it was is the cells had been charged to a level where the fusible link wire was now drawing more current than it should have or what it was capable of delivering, and it was actually popping those little fusible link wires, and that's what the ticking noise was. Well, anyway, to make a long story short, by 4 o'clock that afternoon, we said, we have no idea what the ticking is. We don't want to leave it inside over the weekend. I have no idea where it's going to go from here. Let's put it outside. So we were pushing it toward the big warehouse door on the west side, and the sun was, of course, at 4 o'clock, was beating down on that door. It was 114 outside in Phoenix, and this was a flat black 1,000-pound case. Well, you know what flat black items do in direct sun. They heat up enormously. So we then decided, do we really want to throw that much heat on this thing, considering it's ticking and we don't know what it is? So we decided, let's leave it inside and then push it outside if we need to. Well, this is 4 o'clock. Well, the shop supervisor went over into the other buildings. We have 7 commercial buildings here. Came back at 5 to 5 and realized that this thing had already ignited. There was no one in there for that last hour. Being an engineer, he decided, you know what? I need to record this. You know how engineers are. They need to collect data before they take action. So rather than just simply push it out or get a forklift and drag it out, he began to take pictures, and this thing went
the
ballistic.
fire.
Well, of the small fire coming out the front.
Okay, yeah.
Right? Before you know it, there was a 8-foot flame beginning to shoot out the top of this thing. There was so much heat that the forklift, which was there by now, couldn't get close enough to it because there was a driver on a forklift. The radiant heat was so intense that he couldn't get close enough to pick it up and drag it out. And the fire department shows up. First, they tried water. It just laughed at them. Then they tried CO2. Then they tried foam. And finally, they were trying to get a hold of Tesla the entire time. What do? We got to, one of your batteries is on fire. How do we control this? And they said, we have no idea how to fight this. We're just going to back away and let this thing go. And we stood there for 2.5 hours on Central Avenue in front, watching the building just torch. They were, of course, shooting water inside, 6,000 gallons a minute of water. And it was just laughing at them.
What was the second one?
The second one was 4 years later, and it was the replacement building now. In the middle of the night at 2 o'clock, I get a call, and they said, you've got a fire. And I thought, this is just a bad dream, because lightning only strikes once. It doesn't strike twice, right? All right.
I've seen stories of people being hit by lightning twice.
Really?
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. Jesse, if you Google it, see if you can find something on it.
They're like a magnet for lightning, right? Well, anyway, to make a long story short, I get there, and they said, it looks like the electrical panel caught on fire. And, of course, by that time, the roof had caught on fire, and the cars. Once the lithium-ion battery packs, we had 31 cars in this building. Once they ignite, you can't extinguish them anymore. So then we had investigators come out. It's very important for insurance companies, cause and origin, because then they can move liabilities around. They had a team of people out there for 4 days underneath tents that were cordoning off areas, hazmat suits that were meticulously looking
like E.T.
for
film
things.
or something.
Oh, they had tweezers. They were, everything got documented very carefully. Finally, they had attributed it to, there was some arcing in a conduit, again, back to electrical, but the final cause was unknown.
No way, after all that. Unknown. That's horrible.
Yeah.
Unknown.
The good news, if there's any kind of good news here, it was not another battery fire. So that was important because, our reputation would have been shot completely. But so getting back to Battery Bunker.
Yeah,
now.
Battery Bunker.
Right.
I like the name. Just Battery Bunker. Is it underground? It sounds like it's because the bunker's normally underground.
Yeah. There's a certain activity that takes place when you're repairing electric vehicles that is operating within a safe zone. And that is when it's inside the battery pack that the manufacturer has taken all kinds of precautions to make as safe as possible. And that's in the event of fire, in the event of collision, puncture, driving it into a lake, those types of things.
Yeah.
Where all bets begin to diminish is when you take the sheets or the modules out of a battery pack, out of the controls and safety, the safety controls in a car, then you elevate the risk.
Okay.
So we decided, although none of the other shops are doing it, for us, it was important to separate that activity. So what we did was we put a 40-foot steel container. Oops, my headset just went off. There we go. We put a 40-foot sea container outside. We completely lined it on the inside, put fire sensing type sensors inside.
How complicated is the lining?
Not very.
Okay.
The fundamental premise is that if you have a fire inside the 40-foot sea container, it's far enough away from the building where it's not going to affect the building. And worst case, if they can't contain it or they can't put it out, it's just going to glow cherry red until it extinguishes itself way far away from the cars that are inside the building. So that's what the battery bunker is about.
Right.
And you know what I'm proud of is that, two things. The tenacity and the perseverance that our company has. Anybody after a second fire said, screw this. Yeah, we're done, right? And so anyway, that and the fact that we're always leaders in the industry. We're always innovating. We're always doing things differently, showing other people how to do things.
That's your videos is very cool, like, because you disclose everything and talk about everything openly on what you do.
Yeah, there's no point in maintaining anything as a proprietary process other than one thing that we do that we seem to be the only ones able to do it, which is identify a resistive cell in a collection of parallel connected cells.
Okay.
And that's part of the reasons that we can take a dead or dying Roadster and put it back on the road over and over and over again repeatedly.
Yeah. That's cool. So this Battery bunker, so it is a 40-foot container, like outside one of the buildings.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. And it has a number of controls inside. We developed strict protocols after even the first fire, and those are all in place, and those have been even intensified further.
And they've all been isolated inside this container rather than inside the building.
Right. So when we have a sheet, for example, out of a Tesla Roadster, it's about this big, weighs 120 pounds or something. When we have one of those that we're keeping on what we call life support, trickle charging to keep it up at a certain voltage level, that's in that battery bunker.
Oh, okay.
And we do not do any charging inside the building at night, and all of the major charging is done in that battery bunker.
Okay, well, it seems like, I don't know, the way you explained everything, that now all makes sense. And just go, okay, I get it. For sure.
And, again, we call our facility the auto shop of the future. And in many ways, this is the model for the other EV shops that are going to emerge. Right now, EV shops, independent EV shops, let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Unlike Tesla service centers or Rivian or all the others, they are generally small. They're not well funded. They aren't well sourced. And what we're hoping to do is set an example for those types of shops so that they don't have the same kind of problem that we did with our first fire.
That's something like someone would just be able to like Google and research, or would they have to physically like speak to you or to do a tour saying, hey, I want to start something, and then speak to you about it? There's not like a book on it or anything, is there?
The majority of information available to someone that wants that that type of data or that type of info is our YouTube channel, which is Gruber Motors, and we have almost 1,000 videos out there now.
You're doing so much content.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
It's a combination of tutorials, examples of how we repair, and someone that was truly interested would glean enough information, I think, just out of those videos.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Okay, so let's leave it on this. So talking Tesla with Pete Gruber, let's leave it on Tesla. What's the future of Tesla? Where are they going now? Like, I hear about this supercomputer they got, like this Dojo thing, and there's AI, and they're like changing like all the data that they had, that they're saying, oh, maybe like we should take the best data of the best human drivers and put it in 2 lines of code instead of, maybe tell me a little bit about that if you have it within you.
Well, sure. One of the things that I find inspirational working with Tesla is that they really model the types of things that we're doing as well, which is staying on the forefront of technologies.
Yeah.
You know, there are a lot of companies that get disappointed and that are decimated by new technology and eventually go out of business because they don't know how to migrate. Tesla not only embraces, but they innovate and create new technologies.
Mm-hmm.
And I personally find that very inspirational. It harkens back to the early pioneers, the inventors, the Thomas Edisons and Nikola Teslas, you know. Always looking for funding back then, by the way, as well, just like they are now. But Tesla, fortunately, has now developed a stream of cash flow, which allows them to dabble in many new technologies. And, you know, this foray into AI with Elon and the Dojo computer that you mentioned, we feel this is truly the future. I mean, you're beginning to use Midjourney, you're beginning to use ChatGPT, and it's going to become very prevalent in business.
Yeah. So how with the Tesla AI and I guess like the complexity of that, is that going to help driving?
Yes.
Or vehicles on the road?
Yeah, because cars will drive themselves. Like we mentioned earlier, there will be no need for human intervention, for traffic signals, for cops to to issue radar tickets. It will all be automated, and I don't think there's anybody on the planet that doesn't admit that machines are going to do a much better job of any of this than we are.
Do you think right now, if it's self-driving, that no one would be speeding?
No, the machines are...
They're not allowed to speed. You've got to stick to the speed limit.
And the final equation there is, will there be a need for speed limits when machines are making intelligent decisions about what is safe?
Just kind of flowing better.
Yeah. I mean, how many times have you sat at a light for 2 minutes or 3 minutes
Ages.
with no traffic going
All
by
the time,
you?
especially in Phoenix for some reason.
Well, machines aren't going to allow that. They're going to look at efficiency. They're going to look at traffic flow, and they're going to adjust accordingly. So no, we have a much brighter future ahead.
Okay. So the future is good. Well, the future is bright. And there's that song. I think you've even mentioned it. You know, the future's so bright, you have to wear shades, right?
You know, except for the doomsayers. And here's where I get into AI. Even Elon subscribes to this. It's dangerous. It's going to annihilate mankind.
Yeah, that's kind of more, he does talk about it. He is pushing more like, it's dangerous, I'm worried.
Yeah. But, you know, you press any of them. How? Why? And those fundamental questions are never articulated. Why would something that is extraordinarily intelligent have the same weaknesses that humans do?
Yeah.
Greed, envy, anger, hostility, you know, desire to kill out of anger. It's illogical. It's like Spock said to, the captain one day when they were talking about the extinction of whales. He said, Captain, driving a species to extinction is highly illogical. And that's how machines operate, you know.
Remember that highly illogical, the Spock phrase.
Yeah.
Everything was illogical.
So
was he one of the first AI guys, do you think, Spock? The way he spoke and stuff.
You know, I think Hollywood and the media has a gift in that they begin to acquaint us with the future.
Yeah.
Oftentimes without realizing it. You know, they think they're playing into our fear, doubt, and uncertainty. It's going to sell tickets, you know, like the Terminator movie.
Yeah.
But then you get these creative writers behind the scenes that get inspiration from somewhere that begins to paint a picture of what the future is going to be like. Right. Remember the Jetsons?
Yeah.
They had
flying
talking
cars
wrist phones. You know?
Did they?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Flying cars. Yeah. There's another one. Robots that would bring you supper, right?
Yeah. I watched all those as a kid, and it still hasn't really happened.
And you never thought it was possible. You thought, oh, well, this is just entertainment. It's not anything that could ever happen, right?
I don't know. I think well, when you're watching cartoons, you almost think it's real anyway.
And now we're living it, you know. Now we're, But
the future is bright as far as the way that the technology, you know, with AI, EV, it's all looking into the future. Yeah. So why there can't be anything bad for that, because it's to improve things, just like medical science.
Yeah. Well, all right, let's look at it one other way, Chris. Even if the future isn't bright, do you want to live out the rest of your years in fear, doubt, and uncertainty?
No. Yeah. Actually, and like most people, I want to keep living to see what happens next.
Yeah. I mean, curiosity. I mean, you know, your health and everything works much better when you're an optimist.
Okay. So that's a good point to end on, I would imagine. Just be optimistic and don't have any doubts.
Don't subscribe to the naysayers.
Yeah, the naysayers. And there's plenty of that on social media, as you know. But I really appreciate your time today.
I
Fist
know
bump.
that your dad watches these.
Yeah, yeah.
Let's do a fist bump. And I want to thank you, sir, from the bottom of my heart, for first of all creating this.
His
guy,
name's
'cause he's a wonderful
Bill,
guy.
by the way.
Bill. Okay, Bill. And thank you for being a partner in our presentations in our video. Appreciate it.
He might be not number one fan. He can't watch it live because he's in England, so he'll watch it in the morning. But yeah, man, like I talk to him almost every day, and we're talking about the Gruber podcast every day in the conversation. So,
well, thank you for joining us as well, Bill. I'm sure you'll be watching this one.
Thanks. Hey, Dad. All right.